Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Norris at Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friend Sam Clement. Sam, say hello.
John, how are you doing?
Sam, I'm doing okay. I'm probably a lot better than the legal department over in Nvidia.
You probably had a little wake-up call yesterday.
Well, it's in case you just really don't follow the business news or Nvidia just in general. Let me just tell you, the Department of Justice and all kinds of regulators around the world are just agog at NVIDIA's rapid growth and their proprietary technology, and now we're taking a look at perhaps antitrust against NVIDIA, and of course that's going to send the markets reeling, or send the stocks reeling, because no one really knows what the regulators are going to find. And frankly, in a lot of ways, it's kind of the regulators' rules, and they're not necessarily real clear, and it's kind of like you're innocent, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, antitrust is kind of a buzzword in the business world, and there hasn't been as much actual companies being broken up, like maybe Standard Oil, something of that sorts. But we've seen it with Microsoft lately, going through a case. Yeah. We've seen it with Google, is always talked about, because out of the big tech, they seem to have their tentacles in the most different lines of business. And Nvidia seems to be, you get that first, it comes across the news, and they've been the talk of the town for over a year at this point.
Yeah, probably 18 months.
But AI has been the topic,
yes.
And Nvidia is the biggest benefactor of
it.
It
is the poster child for AI.
And so now it kind of seems just natural for the government to kind of get involved in.
Well, it does seem sort of like deja vu all over again, and talks about just bringing antitrust against some of the tech companies, because if you're a tech company and haven't had the DOJ looking into what you're doing, then maybe you're just not all that good.
Yeah, you kind of want to.
Yeah, you kind of want to. Otherwise, you haven't been successful. But it really does kind of bring up a very valid point. Is Google having a near monopoly on the search engine business here in the United States, is that really a problem for consumers? Is Microsoft Word's dominance in word processing, is that really a problem for consumers? Is NVIDIA's fastest chips ever and their ability to produce them just quickly and increase their technology each quarter, is that really a problem for consumers? And ultimately, that's kind of what the thought process is about breaking up some of these, unicorns, the naturally occurring monopolies, if you will. Is really what NVIDIA is doing bad for consumers?
Yeah, and Microsoft was also a focus for video games.
Yeah, is that the problem for consumers?
And so, the NVIDIA one seems, and again, it's early. We don't really know the full scope of things, but if it's a true just focus on antitrust for what their business is, it seems a little unique compared to some past ones in the large tech space, in that Microsoft has countless lines of business. Google has countless lines of business. Nvidia is much more focused on sort of one line of business. It's data centers and semiconductors, which are really kind of one and the same, but
they
same
go
industry.
Hand in glove.
Yes. So that's what's unique to this, but it's also, there is lots of competition. What's different about this too is there's lots of companies competing. They're just not as good, and that's not my words, that's the words of the CEOs that are justifying the tens and hundreds of billions of dollars they're planning on spending.
Well, and the reason why we're going into all this today is because just to show that just because the government is doing something doesn't mean it's always a good idea for the consumer. And frankly, same in a lot of ways can do the consumer a lot of harm. It's when you take a look at just kind of in history, breaking up monopolies, breaking up trust, I'm not exactly sure if there is a huge benefit necessarily for the consumers. John Rockefeller said when they broke up Standard Oil, I'm wealthier now than I was.
Sure.
Because he got ownership in all the breakups. And also what he said was, well, what did I do wrong except for make gasoline affordable to everyone and start off with kerosene? And when you take a look at just throughout history, when you have a naturally occurring monopoly, which is very rare, it's generally because they are producing a product that the consumer wants and they're driving the price down in order to keep competition out. That is the whole deal. That's how it works. Oftentimes the monopolies that we do have, frankly, are created by the government, and that's when all of a sudden people don't have a lot. I mean, consumers don't have any choice. Utilities are a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I always laugh about the marketing departments for different utility companies.
I mean, why does Southern Company need to advertise in Birmingham? I mean, Alabama Power is the power provider. In any event, kind of moving forward and taking a look at lawsuits or investigations by the DOJ and Nvidia and what have you, it just kind of begs the question: just how involved do we really want the government to be in private industry, understanding that there are already a mountain of laws on the books about how how businesses should operate?
Well, the short answer is they're too involved, in my opinion. But I think with the key word you talked about with some of these examples that we've discussed is the word natural.
Yeah.
In terms of how they came about, because you kind of hit on it. To create a natural monopoly, you have to be offering a better product or service at a better price.
It's generally somewhat unique.
There has to be these barriers for other companies to get in. I mean, talking about an Amazon being able to deliver something in now 4 to 8 hours at a competitive price. That is really tough to build out and build to scale.
Yes.
That's where the monopoly comes from in that sense. And so,
and Amazon is working like the dickens to ensure that no one gets into that space, understanding that, hey, if they start jacking up their prices or what have you, people will just start going back to the store, or they'll go to Walmart.com. They'll do just about anything.
It's like so many industries where there's this kind of race to the bottom.
Yes.
In terms of fees is one, and a lot of professional industries. Yeah. Whether it's the cost of goods, what have you, you're competing on getting prices down at scale. And so once you kind of achieve that, this all sounds largely good for the consumer. The problem is when you get those unnatural monopolies, and I think those are two kind of completely separate issues.
I think they're two separate issues, and not necessarily the issue I want to talk about here today, because what I really do want to talk about is, again, government's role in business. Understanding that, in a society, you have to have someone to set the rules and someone to enforce the rules. It's just a question of how involved you want the rule maker to be in how you conduct your lives and how you conduct business. And I would say that moving forward, we just can't take anymore. I mean, when you take a look really at the size of the federal budget deficit at $35 trillion, anticipated to add another 18 to 19 trillion dollars over the next decade, we'll easily, Sam, by the time you hit 40, have accumulated debt in the U.S. in excess of $50 trillion. The only sure way of reducing the government's just indebtedness, if not the outright level, but at least to decrease the increase in the annual deficit, is to grow the economy. Mm-hmm. That is a foolproof way in order to eventually increase tax revenue. It's a perfect correlation, 1-to-1. You grow the economy, there's more money to tax, and there you have it. I mean, it's just pretty straightforward. However, you don't get there by putting regulations on business. Mm-hmm. And so that goes into sort of what the mindset is. If your worldview and mindset is, we need to constrain business from making too much money, and I'm cool with regulations, that's fine. Vote however you want, live your life however you want. However, if you're looking at the world saying, I want businesses and the economy to grow as rapidly as possible, understanding that not everyone's going to benefit equally, that's your worldview. And so which one is best? Doing what I do for a living and how I was raised and how I view the world, I'd rather try to grow it as rapidly as possible, hoping that I get some crumbs that fall off of the table.
I think it reminds me of the saying that a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
And in that instance, they're all risen equally. But we've seen this with countries that have massive economic expansion. It is the best way to increase the quality of life, the standard of living, decrease the poverty rate, what have you, all these metrics we have.
Grow your economy.
And it's not about the government spending more. If they had a little more change in their pockets, then they could solve these issues. There's already enough.
Yes.
I mean, it's so funny. We've talked about this, years ago at this point, but these estimates for the cost to solve poverty, to solve homelessness, what have you. We have that money, and we spend it
Yes.
on an almost daily basis.
Yes.
So this has never been a revenue issue.
Yes.
So
I tell you what, next time you start preaching, turn around and face the congregation, my friend, because I'm in the choir loft, and I'm going, yes,
I
amen,
love it.
Amen, brother.
I love it. But so the only way this works is growing the economy.
Yes, I think so. And I would tell you again, regulations are not there. And the reason why I say that is because when you have a regulation, there's a cost of complying with that regulation. You have to ensure that gets done. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you want to phrase it, how you want to sell it to me. I will sit there and counter every single time that whenever you put a new regulation, however small it is, that is an additional cost to doing business. That's just plain and simple. I mean, by definition, a regulation is a cost of doing business because it prohibits you from doing something that you might do otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so if nothing else, you have the foregone opportunity cost by having the regulation in place. Hopefully you would agree with me on that.
I do.
So what happens when you have the Code of Federal Regulation, which encapsulates all the regulations that we have on the books, conducting a ton of different things. Sam, there's 50 titles in the CFR, 200 volumes, 50 titles, 200 volumes, and over 200,000 pages. 200,000 pages.
That's a lot.
And when you think that the average Christian Bible has, not maybe your study Bibles, but your standard King James or something like that, depending on the font size, might be about 1,500 pages. That's the equivalent of 133 Bibles. Some people it takes a full year of reading to finish the Bible if you start from the beginning to the end. So all that's saying is you're going to need 133 years starting now, Sam, reading every night to finish the current CFR.
I don't like it.
So you tell me, Sam. You're a young guy. You've got all the insight and new ways of doing things. I'm an old dog. You can't teach me no new tricks, anything like that. I sit a lot, and I beg a lot. Those are the new tricks I do. How can you sit there? How can anyone sit there and tell me that when we have federal regulations, this doesn't include local ordinances or state laws, this is federal regulations, over 200,000 pages of rules and ways of doing business, all that stuff. How are you going to tell me that does not have a significant cost for business?
It has to, and it's more a quantifiable showing of the overall bloatedness of government in general. I mean, originally it was.
But that's not a Gen Z comment.
Originally,
you're here for the Gen Z aspect of that.
I'll have to think about what that comment would entail, but originally it was issues not expressly granted to the federal government.
But yet they're granted.
Now it's everything.
Yeah.
We've just completely thrown that part out the window.
And there is a cost to it, a severe cost to it. And this again really kind of leads me to, again, back to your worldview. Is the role of taxation, is the role of regulation to increase revenue for the government or to increase revenue for society? Mm-hmm. I am personally of the take that all this, everything the government should be trying to do would be to increase the size of the economy. Because, let's face it, if my slice of the economy is 1/8, so what, right? Mm-hmm. It's 1/8. Would you rather have a 15-inch pizza or a 9-inch pizza?
Probably the bigger one.
Well, of course.
I'm pretty hungry.
Now, would I rather have a quarter slice, 1/4 of a 9-inch pizza, or 1/8 of a 15-inch pizza?
Yeah. You want the pizza to grow.
Yeah, I want the pizza to grow. So I mean that's kind of the way that I view this whole thing, and with the numbers that the government has given us, its estimates for the next 10 years, there is absolutely no way I can fathom why, if you're saying this is going to happen, another close to $20 trillion in accumulated debt, a growth rate of 2.25%, 2.5%, why is that acceptable? Why is that? Why are we saying that's acceptable? And I would say it's not acceptable. And since I'm saying it's not acceptable, the only way that we can make this somewhat palatable, lots of word, big word, I think,
I like it,
is to grow the economy at 3% more, or 3% or more. And in order to do that, we need to unfetter the economy.
sold.
I mean, let's grow this bad boy. I mean, what are we doing? Why are we messing around? Why are we constraining companies? Why are we investigating Nvidia? Why are we getting after Google because it's the dominant search engine? Why are we doing this?
You sold me already.
It reminds me of a story that my father told me back when he was in graduate school at American University getting his MBA. They had someone from the Kennedy administration a long time ago.
60s.
Yeah, so early 60s. And the guy came in, he's from someone, I think it's Department of Agriculture, and believe it or not, back then, frozen concentrated orange juice was kind of relatively new. And the guy from the DOJ, or the DOA, whatever he is, USD, wherever he was from, came in and said, we're going to get to the bottom of what they're doing. By God, we're going to get to the bottom of the frozen concentrated orange juice business. And my dad, I remember thinking, why? What's there to get to the bottom of? They're allowing everyone to have orange juice. We can store it better now. It's not as perishable an item. And so that to me kind of summed it up. It's good. This has been a long time coming, and it really does depend on where your worldview is. And I would tell everyone, listen, if you vote based on just good old-fashioned social issues, none of this is going to change. None of what Sam and I are saying here today is going to change your vote. Absolutely not. However, if your take is purely economic, by all means, go out and read the policies and see which one is going to grow the economy far more rapidly. Now, the argument is that the Biden administration has done a pretty good job in growing the economy, at least the top line numbers. And that's really been largely done, in my estimation, due to all this IRA money that Inflation Reduction Act, government expenditures, that while that has helped grow the economy, it's helped to grow the budget deficit even more. Mm-hmm. And so we can't continue to have that type of growth for forever. We need to get back to letting businesses grow the economy as opposed to the other way around.
A wartime or recessionary budget deficit
is
what we're in right now with strong growth.
And so what would you like to see as Gen Z moving forward? What would be your ideal world in terms of the government's involvement and how you live your life and conduct business? And what do you think we can really do about big bad business that is out to screw the U.S. consumer?
Look, I mean, this is painting with a broad brush, and there's examples of monopolies that probably should be investigated and what have you. But
are those naturally occurring monopolies?
No, I'm envisioning companies that are paying off suppliers or what have you to gain illegal advantages and shut down competition.
Well, I would argue there are already laws on the books like fraud and what have you that
there's
already there.
The government loves repetitive laws. And I could go into a lot of
detail. You're guilty twice.
I could go into a lot of detail on that. But, we have more and more countries and international companies that are really trying to compete with us. And it seems like we are holding back. I mean, we are clearly holding back to an extent. So the only way we continue to maintain a competitive advantage is to allow the best companies on earth, which are in the United States, undoubtedly and arguably in the United States, to continue to be the best companies.
And the best way of doing that?
Let them do what they're good at. I mean, the Nvidia thing, and again, I haven't read the full DOJ report. If it's truly about the fact that they have the best product, I mean, you can go back to 2005 and hear Jensen, their CEO, talking about things that are coming true right now with AI. He was a full step ahead of when the iPhone was coming out. He said, we're going to move past the point where it's click and a command comes back to you, and starting to have this full AGI. And this foresight that a company had could possibly now be getting punished for 10 years of a head start that really they took a risk on.
Well, and let's say they do bust it up in some form or fashion, have to make that technology more widely available in the marketplace. what's to stop our friends over in East Asia from getting greater access to
They're
that?
already trying, and U.S. companies are trying. Semiconductors are not a one-company industry.
No.
I mean, there's a handful based in the United States. Large ones. Intel's a large one.
Yeah.
Micron's a large one. Texas Instruments, AMD.
I guess Broadcom's not technically an American
Not technically,
company.
but so there's lots of available competition with laws already on the books about natural competition.
Yes.
And one company having the foresight to look into this and to invest in the future decades before, literally over a decade before other companies were, is where they're at now.
All right, we're now kind of pushing up against our time limit, so I'm gonna ask Sam a kind of a loaded question. It'd be interesting to hear what he has to say about this. Now, we've talked a lot about the Nvidia and antitrust and how we go after tech companies and naturally occurring monopolies. Do you think, and I don't know if ironic's the right word, but paradoxical, I think might be the best word, that the world's largest monopoly, which is the U.S. federal government, is going after corporations that they view as monopolistic?
It is. It is
Hypocritical, I think.
hypocritical. I mean, this is a entity that has squashed competition, and I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast just listing out industries.
So when the federal government squashes out dissidents, people that are trying to break up its monopoly, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when the federal government, tries to bust up monopolies itself, that's also a good thing.
Yeah,
That's two sides of the mouth.
it is.
Gosh, oh, man. All right. Well, guys, we always love to hear from you. So if you feel so inclined, if you like what you heard, by all means, drop us a line at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com, or you can leave us a review on the podcast Owl of the Choice. Sam, I got to tell you, I really screwed that up to start with.
I don't think so.
Well, okay. If you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we got to say or how we think, you can also go to oakworth.com, OAKWORTH.com. Take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab for all kinds of exciting information, including links to previous Trading Perspectives podcasts, links to our newsletter/blog, Common Sense, links to our quarterly analysis, which we call Macro and Market, links to other articles from Oakworth client advisors, such as John Hensley, Richard Littrell, Janet Ball, and then, as always, links to articles from Matt Frazier and the remainder of the advisory services team. Well, that being said, Sam, come on, give me one more insightful thought on this exciting topic.
That's all I've got.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.